So today, we're in discussion with the filmmakers behind the Irish film Finding You, and we're delighted to welcome the film's writer and director, Brian Baugh, producer Julie Ryan, actor Patrick Bergin, and cinematographer Michael Lavelle. So thank you all for joining us, guys.
Great to be here. Yeah, honored to be here with you on your panel. So thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So without further ado, I'm just going to give people tuning in, Finding You is a heartwarming romantic comedy based on the 2011 young adult novel, There You'll Find Me by Jenny B. Jones. It stars Rosie Reed, Judith Goodacre, and Catherine McNamara, Patrick Bergin, Saoirse Monica Jackson, and Vanessa Redgrave. Young Finlay Sinclair lives in New York and she plays the violin. When she failed her audition to get into a prestigious New York music school, she decides to take some time out and to study a semester abroad. And she chooses to travel to Ireland, to a small coastal village. She gets to know a lot of the local characters in the local community, and she also then meets a movie star heartthrob, Beckett Rush, who is filming on location in Ireland, as has been a lot of people in recent years, which is wonderful. And her life begins to get complicated from there. So, Brian, I'm going to come to you first. You, as the director and the writer, you seem to have a knack for telling stories that are socially relevant and inspirational stories for human stories, I guess, with films that you've done like I'm Not Ashamed, The World We Make, and so forth. What attracts you to the themes that you've had in these films, and obviously like Finding You as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm just attracted to stories that will uplift audiences in general. I think in the world we live in, oftentimes there's especially the last few years, there's just been some waves of negativity. So I think I'm inspired more than ever to do stories that leave people smiling at the end of their time in the theater or at home on screen, watching at home, or on Sky TV or wherever they see it. So that's something that I've just always liked. I think, I liked him as a kid, and one of the great things I've loved about cinema is how it can transport you to another place, like Ireland in this case, and then leave you with a sense of wonder and a sense of hope. So I guess it's just how I'm built.
And did you have a connection in advance with Ireland? And was Ireland a theme already in the book? I didn't know the book in advance.
Yes, it follows the storyline that is in the book, and the author of the book had a deep love for Ireland, and I think just was writing the book as an excuse to tell a story there. And yes. So we were fortunate to travel over before we even started writing, and as we were doing some initial groundwork to see if the project was even possible, and we all fell in love with Ireland as we came over. When we met Julie,
and when you say we, now, who would you have considered in your entourage at that stage, making that decision about, okay, I'm going to adapt this book, I'm going to write it and so forth. So who are the people you would have been, mulling that over with?
Right. So the lead producer, Ken Carpenter, and myself, and then one of the executive producers who had bought the rights to the book, Julian. So the three of us went over to Ireland to meet with Julie and to see if the project would be possible and to start our Ireland adventure.
Yes. And what's, before we start talking to Julian and obviously, that whole connection with seeing if it could be made, tell us first. So did you say you did that trip before you even started rewriting, before you started writing your script day one?
We did, because they didn't want to spend any resources until they knew what would be possible, and just to see what things would be like, and if we could do it within the scope that we were looking for.
Okay, well then we might jump on in that case, because I thought it would have been the other way around, that you would have been writing it and all of that. So in that case, we'll jump on a little bit to you, Julie, seeing as you're mentioned at that early stage, in terms of, so what exactly, you know, when you came, you contacted, you needed to film this in Ireland. It was a co-pro in a sense, was it, Julie? And how were you able to convince them that you're the right person for this? Or did you scout around, Brian, or did somebody say, there's this girl in Ireland that can deliver that movie for you?
Yes, well, we did have a strong recommendation.
Okay.
So that was helpful.
And good recommendation it was.
With part of, you know, we just became an additional member of the Julie Ryan fan club, you know.
Okay. Julie, you may as
We
well.
got our mouse ears and everything, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I started chatting to Ken and Brian first, I mean, I work with you know, filmmakers from the States, you know, a good bit. I used to live and work over there, and it was through yeah, a work colleague that we've both worked with before, and as Ken as well, who's my co-producer. So when we kind of just met, I think we just clicked like straight away, really. In terms of just getting on and knowing that we'd be able to head into this journey together for the next few years. But also I really like the story, and I really like kind of heartwarming family fare as well. And I just, you know, I just knew heading into it with the guys was going to be, because we didn't have the script at that point. And we did change certain elements of the story as well. But I think we were all kind of on the same page about where that was going, in terms of if we were all going to be happy still working on it when we had the script at the end, but we all just had a very clear outline of how the different elements that were going to change in the scripting process, and a trust, I think, from our first initial meetings. And then Brian and Ken followed me to Belfast to a hen party.
Just doing some research.
So we were able to meet again and kind of chat a few times when they were over. But I think we just knew that, you know, we were going to be a good team working together. And I suppose just kind of laying out the landscape for them, in terms of how it works in Ireland, and obviously the brilliant crews that we have, but also how they, you know, the co-production work between Ireland and the US, because it's something that I'd been through, you know, a good few times before, and it was kind of more second nature to me at that point than actually just making straight Irish productions, to be honest. So yeah.
And so for people who are currently you know, have projects and trying to figure out, you know, how to kind of marry up somebody in the States with Ireland, what were the key things that you had to look at, Julie, in terms of the producer in the States? Were they able to give you an idea of the kind of budgets they could be talking about? And then do you need to go off and figure out location wise the kind of costs that are involved, etc.? Like, you obviously have a gauge for this already, but what were the challenges for you? Or were there any challenges? Did you know straight away you could do this?
I mean, I think we didn't have the script, you know, when we first started chatting about this, so we didn't know for sure. We just had to all be agreed on the principle of what we're trying to achieve, and the production values of what we're trying to achieve, within the time frame as well, and involving, you know, all our different investors and all the different kind of interested parties and distribution, etc., you know, which we always had in mind from the beginning of where we were going to be actually looking for with this film. And the aim was always to have, you know, a theatrical release in the US, which we're delighted we were able to do even during COVID, you know.
Yes.
But I think in terms of like, when I'm chatting to producers, incoming kind of co-producers, like we can always, you know, we can always work within certain budgets. It just has to be, there has to be clear transparency on expectations from the start, not in the sense of you can't have this and that. It's more, okay, this is what you can probably get in and around this budget range, but if we were to move this and this around, then we might be able to try something different. And you know, and then, I mean, once you're agreed on that, there's so much more work to be done in terms of like locations and crew and all of that. You're just in it together at that point, you know. And that it's through finding little minutiae in the script that you can maneuver the budget to work in different ways, like we did with like the story within the movie within a movie, you know, like that became such a bigger thing that it was supposed to be.
And incredibly it worked so well, you know, and quite seamlessly. But okay, so
it was all because of the producer was on a horse during that scene.
Julia. Okay.
If you look closely, Julie's on the horse, you know, and that's why, you know, it may have gone so smoothly. She was happy.
Very funny. Yeah, very funny. And so Brian, you came, you visited, you knew that Julie could make this work, you kind of knew the parameters. Then you to go back and you to kind of start into your job of work, you know, because obviously as the writer and the director, so that's a bit of a challenge in terms of, because whatever you put on the page, you've got to deliver it then as well, you know. So, but at least you knew that you could do that. But tell us a little bit, and we won't dwell on it, but a little bit about that process of taking that book apart and turning it into a script, like the time frame that it took that was involved.
Yeah, it was one of the fastest that I've been through, because usually in the feature world, you're going through layers and layers of, you know, long development processes. And because we were fortunate to have investors that were excited about it and whatnot, it was one of the faster script processes. I think it was about 4 to 5 months, and then we were back there and getting ready to go. So it was really wonderful from my standpoint. So yeah, so it was great, but it was a matter of really just going through the book critically and saying, hey, what's going to work for a movie? What things we wanted to update. You know, filmmaking is a different, you know, film is a different medium than a novel. So you're trying to make things a little more visual or update things. Patrick's character didn't even exist in the book. So we morphed one and transformed one into him, mainly because, having been there, we wanted to feature certain aspects. We wanted to feature the wonderful castles and the pubs and all the things that make Ireland so wonderful and unique. Yeah. And so it was really a process of trying to go through and create scenes and create characters that would bring out these wonderful, magical aspects of Ireland.
Yes, and you did, because it's look, number one, like, congratulations, it is a wonderful film. It caught me unawares, you know. I must say I became quite emotional at that pivotal point. And
good.
They did their job. It was and it's extraordinarily beautiful, you know, and beautifully shot. And I'll talk to you, Michael, about that. But maybe, yes, Stephen, initially, the casting side, obviously, and as you said, some of the characters didn't exist, and you rewrote them, knowing that. And look, that's what makes Ireland attractive as well, as you said, you know, in terms of an audience and pleasing an audience as well. So tell us a little bit about the casting. Who did the casting, and how much of it was done in the US from your side, Brian, and then Julie's side here? How did you split that out?
Yeah, so we really, we had a casting director both in Ireland and in Los Angeles. You know, so Thirza Ging was our wonderful casting director there in Dublin, and we just loved every minute working with her. She was wonderfully devoted. And so really it was a matter, even some of the roles we were looking for in both places, we weren't quite sure where we were going to find them, but we were, for the few characters that are from America, we were looking more in Los Angeles. So our Los Angeles-based casting director, Venus Kanani, was helping us with those. So it's a little bit of, with some of them like, oh, we could do that. And they would both kind of go look and see what could happen. And then we just went with whatever we thought would be best for the story. So, so yeah, it was great. I mean, I think the most wonderful aspect was that actually Vanessa Redgrave was one of the first to commit. And so that really helped with everyone else. Probably helped make Patrick be more at ease, thinking, oh, at least Vanessa did it.
Yes.
So,
well, and I was,
so that was, we were very fortunate that she responded to the script and was interested in the role. And that was,
and did you reach out to her from the US, from LA then? Was that
no, that was all Thirza from Dublin. So yeah, so she had a background, I believe, working as an agent herself. And so she knew quite a few of the, you know, she was well-versed and knew many of the London talent agents and whatnot. And so she was looking for some of the roles that we were looking in both places, both in London and in Dublin.
Okay, because I was actually going to come to that question about Vanessa a little bit later on. You know, I wanted to talk about the chemistry between the two leads and all that. But even as you're talking about Vanessa and the fact that she came on first, like, she's an extraordinary actress, really extraordinary. I think you got her at her best there, like really authentic. You know, anybody would say she's pure Irish, you know, but now she's played obviously the Irish characters before, and she's been, you know, she's Liam Neeson's her son-in-law, and you know, she's been around England. That's northern accent, but she's well versed on the Irish accent, but she is, and so subtle, really, really brilliant. So that was a big coup for you to get Vanessa on board from early on, and as you said, then it would influence the likes of Patrick.
I don't know. Patrick, you know, I'm sure he's his own person who would make his own decisions, but some of the other younger folks, I think, would be like, oh, okay, wow, I get to act with Vanessa, sure.
Yes, and one thing that's wonderful as well about the film is that the age profile of your leads, they're all quite young, which is lovely, mid-20s, kind of, well, I think they're all around that, and it really gives another authenticity, you know, to the film, which is wonderful. And so the chemistry, that was obviously difficult to get your leads to, because the chemistry between the two is really excellent, you know.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you found it that way. That's
between Finley and Beckett, yeah.
That's always one of the greatest tasks, is making sure that is the case. And yeah, so it was helpful. I mean, I always try to, whenever possible, try to get the actors together before, and Jedediah and Rose were able to, I had Jedediah fly out to where Rose was, and the three of us worked together a little bit before we all went to Ireland for prep. And so I think little things like that help, just to create some comfort on set and some familiarity before you are expected to pop onto that first scene and, you know, pretend like you're already in a relationship.
Yeah, and it's funny, we were talking with Katrina Balfe recently, and you know, for Outlander, the central characters, the love interest between the relationship between them, they had to do a chemistry test first, to make sure that was there. Is that the kind of thing that, or did you feel just something more casual to get people around the table and see how they get on?
I guess I mean, chemistry tests are always wonderful when you can do them, but once actors are to a certain place, they're sometimes not going to do it, or just the way the world is with people being spread out and far away and auditioning. Someone's in London and auditioning, another person's Los Angeles, other one's Vancouver, you know, just by the practical nature of it, it gets more and more difficult to do. But I have done that in previous films, and it's really helpful.
And did the character, did Rose actually, did she play the violin? Well, she looked like she was quite comfortable playing the violin.
Yes, she did. She had grown up playing it as, you know, I forget when she picked it up, maybe around, you know, as a younger girl, like 8 or 10 or something, from what I remember. And so, but I think she played a little bit more casually, like she wasn't super into it, but she had some good familiarity with it, and she did really enjoy playing. And so then several months before, you know, I said, we gotta get you some lessons. And so we found a wonderful violin teacher here in Nashville, Tennessee, where she lives. And she trained with her for about 3 or 4 months before we started shooting. And as the composers were suggesting all these difficult classical pieces to audition with, this violin teacher was hating me and trying to talk me out of those Paganini's songs and stuff like that. And
very good. And
but she, you know, we had a wonderful violin double that played all of the violin parts, you know, on the score, Zoe Conway. And so Rose just really had to get the fingering down and make it look right. And it was a challenge of Michael's and I's, like, how long can we get her to play this really difficult piece so we sell it to the audience that she can really play. And Rose worked so hard at it. I'm just so proud of her to pull it off, because that was one of the things Michael and I talked about, is we want to really make this feel authentic, like we're not cutting away during all the hard parts and stuff.
That's right. And you delivered. And if you hadn't done that, it would have, you're right, it would have been a loss really for the audience, I think. But the fact that you delivered it, she looked like the real McCoy, you know. So tell us about the bold Patrick Bergin, and in terms of casting this fantastic actor in the midst of this. Where did that come about, and who contacted who? And
Oh yeah, let me think. I mean, I this was again through theaters of the casting director, and Catherine and Patrick was definitely top on our lists, and we were excited to see if people want to do it. And then thankfully, Patrick, from what I remember, you were enthusiastic about it, and Patrick, being such a great musician, was really excited about the music part, and you know, in our first chats, he was talking about how he used to busk and he understood this character and all of that from his music days. And I think, you know, in many ways now, Patrick, you're as equally excited about the music as you are the acting. So I think it was really, we were so fortunate. And I think what I get so excited about is, you know, a lot of people have seen Patrick's dark side from his previous films, but what jumps off the screen in this, I think, is his amazing warmth, which is what he's like in real life. He's just an amazing person to spend time with. And I was so excited for the world to see that part. And Patrick, you bring such an amazing, I wrote you all these emails about it as the comments were coming out, but his character was such a fan favorite, and just, you know, how unexpected and warm and inviting that he was as this unexpected mentor figure in the film. So good job, Patrick.
Good job, Patrick. Patrick, isn't that just so wonderful to hear? And I think it's so genuine as well, because yes, we've seen you in so many roles over the years back in Hollywood when you were, you know, the bold guy and Sleeping with the Enemy, and you know, you were well able to deliver that type of character. But in this, it was just so subtle and gentle and all-knowing. You know, this older man who the empathy that you showed, and just that, you know, any young girl would take your guidance, you know, so you worked your charm on screen. So what did you see that immediately in the script? What made you take the part? Why were you interested?
Well, absolutely. I felt I could see that in the part. And as Brian said, I used to be a busker.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's like as if it was written for me. And I responded. And on top of that, I have worked with Vanessa before in a film called Baugh, A Ghost Story. So I knew a lot of the ingredients were very comfortable with. And I thought that the story of a love story of this kind is very uplifting. And it was sort of the destiny that was in their meeting in the first place. I love that sort of stuff. So I was completely charmed by it.
Absolutely. And for you, obviously with music, and you were saying busking, you brought out a CD, and I think you brought out a particular song way back. I remember that was it an Irish, a jig or something, and so you tell us.
Yeah, I've had quite a few, and there's one coming out shortly actually called Anthem. Which is a Leonard Cohen song. I sang it for the Pope, and Troker, the charity, are releasing it. So we hope to get some traction with that. But busking, I mean, the busking and the street life, I think that was the thing I wanted to bring most to the character, was that sort of street-friendly sort of character. Because they're wonderful people, buskers, and old tramps on the side of the road, if you get to talk to them. But a funny story relating to being a busker was that I was in LA the night before the day before the Oscars. They have the Independent Spirit Awards, and everybody was there as usual. And Johnny Depp, a lot of them, they were all there. And there was a girl called Christy Swanson who I'd finished a film with, and I went over and was chatting with her, and out by the pool. And then the door opened and Mick Jagger walked out, and he made a beeline straight to me. And he says, "Who are you and what do you do?" And I was a bit taken aback, and I said, "Patrick Bergin, I'm an actor." And he was totally unimpressed and started to walk away. I said, "But I think I might owe you some money, Mick." He turned around and came back and says, "How do you make that out?" I says, "Because when I was working as a busker in Paris outside the Pompidou Center, I made a lot of money out of Honky Tonk Woman. Do people like us owe you money?"
Well done. Well, very
So
funny.
he said, I'll look into that.
Yes. Yes. Very
And
good.
there was that, Brian was a great director because he allowed, he allowed us to be free and yet created an atmosphere on set that was very easygoing.
Yes.
So
Which is lovely.
back to you, Brian. Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So Julie, you obviously had to make it work like an extraordinary production in terms of it almost looks like a showcase of Ireland, the scenery, and obviously the town looked fantastic. The party scene at the end out on the promenade. It was just really brilliantly done. So tell us a little bit, Julie, about, you know, the challenge of breaking that out, and what length of time was your production in Ireland?
So I think we shot for 6 weeks and a few extra days, where we kind of built in some time to go across the country a little bit when we're going up to like the cliffs of Moher, and finding some of the most beautiful graveyards was actually one of our biggest challenges. But I mean, look, Ireland helps itself looking beautiful, doesn't it? You know, in terms of like, obviously, if we have some, and we had good weather, and then we had some, you know, not so good weather. But logistically, how we did it is we filmed in Carlingford for a week because we couldn't afford to go up there for the whole time. So then we were based in and around Dublin, and then we did a little bit of cross country for our last few days, just so we could properly show the expanse of Ireland. We were really lucky when we went up to like the cliffs of Moher, how beautiful it actually was that day. And there's like,
Absolutely.
you know, one shot which actually does look like green screen. It's so perfect when they're sitting up on top of the cliffs of Moher.
I actually had to stop and relook at it and say, but it was just the foreground was definitely the earth and all of that. And I was saying, it looks just too perfect. It was the coloring, and obviously Michael will talk to you about that. So you're saying, Julie, in terms of overall shoot here in Ireland was what?
It was 6 weeks we shot in Ireland, and then a couple of extra days, I think maybe like 2.5. That was the big debate, how many of those days we'd actually ever get in the end.
Yes.
We kind of shot in every which way we could. Like even driving back, we were like shooting, you know, in the car, anything we could, we were shooting. Obviously Michael is a testament to absolutely making it look absolutely beautiful.
So Michael Lavelle, congratulations, really congratulations. It is exquisite in terms of, you know, how it looks on screen, and everything seemed effortless, you know, going from, you know, drama into more scenic, and you were able to, you know, because the characters are all running around, you know, you'd a job of work to do to scale that and to you know, plan around it, but obviously in advance, Brian, you're a cinematographer also, so you must have had a vision for what you, and you obviously did your scouting in Ireland in advance. So you must have had a kind of an idea of what you wanted, you know, the Irish dream, you wanted it to look a certain way. So tell us a little bit about you guys working together, and how you worked together and how you planned it out in advance.
I guess,
but,
I mean,
actually, let me bring it to Michael first, actually, Brian, if you don't mind, and then I'll come back. Yeah. So Michael.
I thought I was going to get away easy
there.
Yeah, no.
I was going to set you up and then make you talk.
I could see you smirk.
I was like staying quiet. I was like, great. Yeah, no, it was actually a joy. I mean, it's obviously Brian is an accomplished cinematographer in his own right. So, you know, we spoke the same language from the moment we met. So that made things very simple in that respect. And then, I mean, I think the other thing that was kind of a joy for me was, I mean, I've done a lot of movies, but a lot of I guess quite a few of the movies I've done would be independent art house films, and in Ireland. So I've done films like Cardboard Gangsters, His and Hers, Patrick's Day, those kind of things. And for those movies, I mean, they each have their own aesthetic, but essentially, it's not about like, it's kind of about celebrating the beauty of ordinary things or something, some of those movies. But this was actually a chance to go, you know, let's just make it really beautiful and show Ireland in all its glory, because you don't, like, ironically enough, coming from Ireland and shooting in Ireland, if you came to here, you'd be like, oh my goodness, wow, wow, wow. But very often when you end up shooting a film in Ireland, you're on a council estate, or, you're in a tougher situation, because that's often where some of the drama, people feel the drama is. So it's really interesting and quite a challenge, actually, and a joyous challenge to kind of say, okay, we live here, but imagine you're in another country and you're watching a film about Ireland. What do you want to see and how do you want to see it? And it was a real pleasure and an honor to actually try and get to show Ireland in all its beauty and all its glory. You really, ironically, you just don't get that chance very often as a cinematographer. You know, and then also Brian had worked with Vittorio Storaro before. So Brian and I had long discussions about how we were going to like the actors and how, the kind of aesthetic Brian liked in terms of, how to make people look great and make everything kind of romantic and cinematic and stuff. So we talked quite a lot about that. We brought a lot of those Storaro style techniques to the aesthetic and to the lighting process and everything, and even to the extent of using really old school lamps, like getting back to really big, heavy tungsten animals and having them up on cranes and stuff, instead of having, these light LED panels that are all the fashion nowadays. We went old school and really lit it like an old Hollywood movie in a way. We're like, more like Storaro style, I guess. And that was a real pleasure for me, So yeah, it was a great collaboration and really a lot of fun and really intense, but a lot of fun. And then of course we had the support from production from Ken and Julie and everything. Absolutely. Which made it possible, because we wanted to make the pier scene look beautiful, and we were like, okay, so how do we do it? It's going to be a bunch of people on a pier, which will be great as the sun sets, but once the sun's gone, we've got nothing. So we were like, okay, what we want to do is we want to cover the whole pier in lights, and and in fairness, it's production. They were like, okay, let's see if we can make it work. It wasn't like, oh no. It was like, okay, let's see if we can make it work. And then, we found a way to make it affordable and manageable, and hopefully and with a little bit of CGI magic in places, we made it look bigger than it was. Yeah, well, I won't take it. Yeah.
Don't tell them where our tricks are.
No.
No, it was stunning. And so, in terms of when you went back, Brian, and you started writing, once you knew that you were doing this and you delivered in that couple of months, at what stage was Michael engaged? And because obviously you had to do a lot of pre-planning before you got here, like in terms of, did you guys do a lot of pre-planning while you were in the States? And while you were here, Michael, was there a lot of online engagement? Was there storyboarding? Was there, how did you work that out?
I was trying to remember. Julie introduced us to Michael, and Julie did a wonderful job of introducing us to the amazing Irish crew that we had, and was so fortunate for her skillful leadership and contacts there. So Michael was one of the first people we had met when we were looking at department heads. I believe it might have even been in that first trip that we were out. I can't remember now. But we went back several times. So we were there, and then we went back about 3 months out again for a week, just to do some very preliminary stuff, which is, I think, when we officially talked about working together, Michael. I can't remember exactly, but I think that's always helpful when you can come, a little bit before the official prep time. And so I think, we just began to work in a little ways there, and did some Zoom calls and started talking about, but Michael's a busy guy, so we had to work around all his other productions and stuff. But
I think
it was great though. I mean, and I think, just creatively, I think it was so, we did, both Michael and I had done stuff at the same, had international travel experiences when we were the age of these characters. And so I think we were both very much wanting to show the specialness of that visually, like, and like when you show up to a new country in your 20s, just how amazing that is and how beautiful it is. And so I think that was fun to bond over that, just as a creative vantage point. Like, yeah, what if you were showing up to Ireland for the first time and it was all just this incredible place?
Yeah, isn't it? And that was the magic that you delivered in this. So Julie, so you were saying there, in terms of you know, obviously you knew Michael's work already, and Michael in particular, I think, you know, Patrick's Day, I remember some of the scenes that you did in Patrick's Day, some really gorgeous, almost like really, you were doing subliminal, you know, dreamlike sequences and all of that, like, and the movement between one and the other, I like, you've an extraordinary quality to the work that you do. So Julie, so tell us a little bit about that, just what we're talking about there, matching the two and the logistics of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to go back on Michael and Brian for a second, like, I think when I met Brian, I knew like immediately that himself and, you know, Mike would get on like amazingly and have a very like similar vision. And, you know, I've worked with Michael over the years on lots of different genre, from unscripted programming to we've made a lot of different things together, but everything he always shoots looks amazing. And like an example would be, we used to make hidden camera shows years ago. And we'd be shooting like, you know, out of a bag, like to get different things. But then the days when Michael would come down, all of a sudden we'd have this cinematic bag shot. Or he'd be like trying to get the shot from somewhere like, you know, different. And, you know, he always just makes everything look so amazing. So I knew that he was just going to be perfect for this. But the second he started chatting to Brian, like, I think it was, you probably don't remember, like, so it wasn't like, oh, we need to do these days to chat to it. They were just organically chatting, you know, afterwards with ideas for kind of where they were going to go in it, you know. And then with in terms of bringing that on camera, like, we, you know, we worked with Michael worked very closely with her production designer Ferdia Murphy, and together they just created such an amazing palette, you know, with Brian as well, just throughout the whole film, which really helped in terms of the aesthetic, like kind of a coherent look, I think, throughout the film, which was great.
Yeah, but Michael, do you want to show her some of your drawings from our prep?
Oh yeah.
I'll spare them the pain.
But you know, that kind of stuff, like, what kind of drawings do you do, Michael? I mean, like, are they just really outline sketches, or do you actually give it texture and color? Do you like, are they detailed?
I think pretty much we kind of storyboarded the entire film, didn't we, Brian? I mean, we storyboarded it, everything, and same with Patrick's Day as well. Like, so we storyboarded the whole film, but I won't be selling any of my artwork, you know. But I won't say I'm a great artist, but what I can say is I can communicate a visual idea. So definitely I can draw to the degree where you can look at it and go, okay, that's a car and that's a house, and I can see which way the car is going, and I can see I'm good at perspective, I think, you know, like, you know, like, so I can kind of give the idea of what the lens will do and what. So
technical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we both had been around seeing, you know, in films of this size, when you're not doing really specific like visual effects work or something, like, you want the freedom to be able to change on set. So we weren't like. And so I remember going through scenes, sometimes we'd just do one picture just to make sure we were on the same page. And then, and we'll do a bunch of close-ups and do this sort of thing. But I guess what I'm a big fan of, and Michael and I were doing this all throughout, is like coming up with a visual strategy for each scene. And you may not need to storyboard it, or sometimes if it's more complex, you will. But we were very much on the same page and had a real strong visual idea, and within that visual idea we might change it, but it would still kind of incorporate all those things, like specifically one thing we were trying to do between the Finley character and Vanessa's character, Mrs. Sweeney, like we one of our visual ideas was to try to keep them apart, and then throughout the course of the movie, compositionally, you see them closer and closer together, so that they're not actually, all their two shots are really spread apart until about 2/3 of the way through the film, and then you start seeing them in two shots, or they're played off in singles and kind of distant from each other. So throughout the course of the film, they're kind of growing closer and closer together visually as they are to reflect their relationship. So like we would come up with principles like that we would, and so some of that you don't need to draw. We just, okay, how far were we last scene? Okay, let's go.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the other thing that's really interesting about it is you kind of end up going, okay, so what's the visual journey in the film, and what's the visual journey for this character, or aesthetically, where is it going to change gear? And we were very clear, I think, you know, working conjunction with each other of like, okay, on this scene, this is when they're going to they're going to get closer, or even that they're not sitting closer, but using the correct lens or the way we frame them or whatever, we'll make them feel closer, and you'll feel the intimacy, or Brian would direct them with more intimacy, or, so it was kind of that, it just finding that dance, and so that you kind of plan the journey across the film. Like Brian says, everything doesn't have to be precisely storyboarded, but we had a really clear language, and we had grammar in the film that we established early, so that by establishing a certain grammar early in the film, when you change it, subconsciously the audience notices, and then they can feel the change, and they feel it and see it,
Yeah.
So I think that's what we really focused on.
Yeah, you might remember the details, Michael, but we were trying to do something with Finley and Beckett too, where it was handheld when Beckett was when he was interrupting the stability of Finley's world. So a lot of the scenes in the first half of the film, when Beckett and Finley come together, they're handheld in a little bit to represent that this guy was coming to Finley's point of view and making things a little bit off kilter. I don't know, do you have anything to add to that?
Exactly. And I mean, a part of it is as well, I have 3 nieces who play violin for the National Youth Orchestra. So they were like very hard on me going, this better look like she can play.
Exactly.
So I remember showing them the footage and going, what do you think? And they're like, oh no, she's really good. That works really well. And they were telling us the bits that worked. But it was the thing of like, when Finley plays initially, she's an excellent performer from the start. I mean, she's able to qualify to apply for even this type Juilliard type school, but she's very stiff. So we kind of felt like her journey, and part of her journey was actually meeting Patrick's character, and Patrick's character, in terms of his interaction with her across the film, you feel he kind of shakes her up a bit and says, you've got to put your heart into it. You've got to put your soul, you've got to play with, as if it's the last time you're ever going to play, and play with all that love and full expression. So her journey was from this kind of stiff, rigid performance to fluid performance. And we tried to incorporate that in the camera. So when you see her play at first, the camera, it means you've got discipline at the start of when you shoot the film. You obviously want to move the camera all around her and make her look great, but you say, no, we'll lock the camera off, we'll frame her in the center, we'll be very, very disciplined, so that later on, when we move the camera, you feel the performance, and you feel the transition in terms of how fluid and how graceful she becomes through her interaction.
And that's incredible. And I'll go to you, Patrick, on that, because I thought it was so well done. I know that you play guitar and all that. I'm not aware of you playing violin. And so I knew that they would probably have a job at hand to camouflage that, to not, because at this stage, I doubt if you were going to do 10 weeks or 12 weeks learning to play, the violin, and that, because
that's how brilliant these guys are. They're just so great.
It was.
We had a guy called Jerry O'Connor, I think, who used his fingers. And I had a ring on my hand, which would relate to both of us.
Oh, wow.
Down to them to make it look good.
Excellent. And but it was really seamless, and but there was a lot of movement in that. I know what you're saying, Michael, about locking up, but when she got up on the stage, and when you got to see that interaction, it was well crafted in terms of how that came across. And obviously also to capture, it wasn't just about the music, it had to do with the relationship between Patrick and Finley as well, and capturing that emotion, because you had to capture Patrick's eyes, because that's where that softness was coming in. Patrick, which we haven't seen for so long, really,
everybody wants to see Patrick's eyes, trust me.
They were.
There we go. Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, all of his fans on the street when we were shooting that wanted his picture.
Yeah.
But when I say we haven't seen that softer side of you in so long, just as Brian had said earlier on. But guys, when I read up in advance of me watching the film, I was saying, gee, they've filmed in so many different locations. Obviously, Julie, you named out the various Irish locations, but you guys filmed in New York, in Los Angeles, in Nashville. Like, could you not have bluffed that and not? Did you really film that much over there, or what was involved?
Well, we didn't film a lot there. No, we just, 99% of the film is shot in Ireland. We just did a pickup of our opening shot in New York, which we just really wanted to get that sense of like New York busy at its finest, to actually, you know, we just didn't really want to try and cheat that. And you can definitely shoot in Ireland, you know, and
Yes.
for, you know, pickups like that, but we just wanted to try and do it there. And then we shot in Los Angeles just for our airplane interior, because we were just having trouble finding the right one that we could use here. And then it was just a really short pickup in Nashville, you know. So they were really short pickups.
And obviously you were able to use kind of local crews there, and you just had the actor it was really for her journey. So okay, I understand. It was just the fact, I can understand, you know, if it was New York, but the fact that it was New York, Los Angeles, I didn't realize that. I was saying, where was the Los Angeles side? And then obviously Nashville, there was a reference to Nashville, but very good. And again, it's about playing this quite smartly, you know, overall, which is excellent. And Brian, had you connections with Ireland before, or was there everybody?
Brian's an Irishman at heart, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah, well, that's it. Have you any?
Julie and Michael trained me up.
Paddy Buck.
Yeah. I know that the crack goes to 90. You know, that's all I know. You know.
You know what?
I know that the crack goes to 90. Yeah. So.
And sometimes it hits 91.
That's right. No, but I had not been there before, and so, but like I said, we leaned on all the Irish crew, and Julie and Michael were amongst the greatest guides, and we wanted to feel really, I think, on all the actors who contributed, I would just continually go, okay, is this right? Would you say this? You know, so yeah, so it's a big deal to me to want to make it work for this, because, and also I knew that this would be a you know, part of our biggest audiences we had in mind was the Irish audience. So
will it get a theatrical release in Ireland?
Julie?
Well, at this point, it's too late. Like when we did our theatrical release in the US, that's when we wanted to go to Ireland, but the cinemas weren't open, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's why it went to Sky. You know, obviously Sky is an amazing platform for it to have, the Sky Original. But you know, I mean, the cinemas just weren't open. You know, like we were getting all ramping up for a full Irish release. It was a very sad decision for us all to make. I mean, we'd love to.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and even like a premiere or anything.
Yeah,
it's
well, you know, we should do something about that at some stage. Let me just invite you from the Academy that whenever, if it ever so happened that Brian, you can be in Ireland or whatever, we should and even get the cast and crew that were here, you know, and get them together. I think that
would be so nice.
Oh yeah.
No,
that would be an amazing thing to do, to honor everyone there. It just broke my heart that all of the amazing creatives and the cast and crew couldn't have a place to bring all their families to the theater and allow them to see their face 80 feet high.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to remedy that someday, right, Julie?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, we were dying to have it, and you know, we had some film festival interest, which would have been amazing to have a proper cast and crew screening, but COVID was so bad at the time, it would have been it would have been a bad decision if we had made it, because everyone was, you know, wasn't great.
Yeah, it really was in the heart of the Delta breakout there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so in terms of, so is it on the Sky platform right now then for
yeah
it
is, yeah.
Excellent. And so guys, tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. So Brian, you're based where? Are you in Los Angeles?
I was in Los Angeles for many years, and recently moved to the Nashville area.
Okay. How come? Have you got music connections there, or are you doing music production, or?
Not really. It was a little bit more for family, and just my wife was from these parts, and wanting to be closer to her family as her parents as they got older. So that was one of the main driving factors. And then I had known quite a few people in the film industry that had migrated out this way. So it was still, so I still work and talk to people in Los Angeles any day. It's sort of like I work in LA still, but just live here, and I travel back all the time.
Yeah. And what's in the pipeline for you? What are you working on right now?
I've got a script right here that I'm rewriting on my desk, and you know, a wonderful period piece. So I'm doing a bunch of writing, and then it looks like, fingers crossed, a production this summer that I've had in the works for several years. And then, so yeah, so 2 or 3 writing assignments that I'm attached to direct. And, but yeah, a lot of producers I find that I'm working with are wanting to see if we can get past the COVID production expenses. And so it's a little bit of a waiting game right now. So in the meantime, I write.
And you're attached to Appointments with Heaven, aren't you? Kind of.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at this summer. That's about these miraculous stories of this doctor dealing with all these things about the afterlife.
All right.
So it's kind of a magical story in that regard. Yeah, and then I've got this 1920s period piece, and then I've just been brought on by a Wayfarer who did 5 Feet Apart in Clouds to do a young adult drama true story that also has some music in it as well.
Yeah. Well, your work is just phenomenal, and I think you can. I think finding you now is another one of those that you can really deliver. And I think it definitely resonates and connects with people in just a simple terms, but very natural. And so well done with that. So keep up the good work. And Julie, for you, what are you on right now? Or you get your hands full. You do a lot of international productions, don't you?
Yeah, I do, and I suppose I've been making a lot of international co-productions on the feature front in the last few years, but now I'm kind of going through a TV phase. And so I have 3 TV series that are going into prep in the next like 6 weeks. So we'll have shot 3 TV series by June. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot going on right now.
Which is great, and a lot going on in Ireland as well. A lot of support structure kind of coming in, and it's kicking in. I think the payoff is coming now, which is good. And Michael, for you, are you involved in some of these projects, or have you a lot of your own stuff?
TBC. I don't know. At the moment, I am. I'm flying out tonight at 4 a.m. to go to London to shoot. To start prep for a show called Silent Witness for the BBC.
Oh, wow.
So I'm starting that tonight at 4 a.m.
Dervla Walsh or Aisling Walsh, one of those was directing that, I think was.
Yeah, that's right. I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm the show. I shot a spy thriller in Italy last summer called Signora Volpe with Emilia Fox from Silent Witness and Judy Appleton, who directed it's like back-to-back, it's like a feature-length TV, but we shot in Italy, so it was an absolute joy. And Judy's directing and writing the first 2 episodes of the next season of Silent Witness. So I've worked with Judy and Emilia before. So yeah, so we're all getting back together, get the gang back together to shoot in London this time. It's actually about, I'm not going to pronounce it properly, Ndrangheta. It's a kind of form of mafia from Calabria.
Okay, very good, very good. And Patrick, finally to you. I know that you were obviously in the Southwesterlies, and you've been quite busy in the last couple of years. You did the Ulysses project as well, and Nutcracker.
I've been very busy. Yeah, doing the Nutcracker, which is a horror film that should be out next Christmas. And I'm going to play a character called the Silver Dragon in end of March, beginning of April. And working on a couple of documentaries, one about my father, and we're working on a book about Helen's ancestry.
Very good, very good. And just a few comments from people coming in there. Ronan O'Leary said about you, Patrick, a perfect performance from Patrick, a great character actor. So well done. And Jason Wright, love the film. It's one of the more authentically Irish American films made here in a long time, and it can easy to tend towards the Blarney and the Irishness. How important was the authenticity to you? I suppose even and then greetings from Cork as well, from Marie O'Halloran, and everybody's kind of just saying how great the film is. But for you, Brian, let's even finish on that in a sense. How important was it for you to make a really authentic Irish film. And as you said, when you talked with Michael about what he wanted to do, he had a very clear sense of that, almost like coming of age, a young person coming to Ireland, seeing this beautiful country, and obviously the romance that was involved as well. But very authentic film. How important was that to you and to all of you, maybe?
Oh, to me, it was really paramount. It was incredibly important to me that it wasn't the laughing stock of the Irish people that saw it. No, this is some fake Americanized version of this. And thankfully, like I said before, everyone was such great collaborators on that. But yeah, that was absolutely important. And it took a team to do it. I could just absolutely relied on so many people to help it. You know, what was the musical term Julie used? Don't make it too
Gosh, I can't remember. I think I definitely.
I was blanking on it. There was one song, and Julie said, "Oh, that's to this." And
Diddly idle, diddly eye.
Diddly.
Diddly or something.
Don't make it too diddly eye. Well, I'll just tell you guys, you didn't. It's really, it's really authentic, is I guess is a good word for it. And Julie, so well done for steering that as well. If you were a little whispering in the ear to say,
there was some shouting in the ear.
Whatever it takes.
Well done. You did it well, and it came to it's just so entertaining. And I know audiences, and I hope on Sky now that it gets access to the audience that it really, really deserves. So well done, and thank you for taking the time to come and talk with us.